What's happening, Packer fans? Welcome into the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. If you could do me a favor, if you have not yet subscribed, please do so. It helps a ton, and I would greatly appreciate it. If you've been enjoying these videos, make sure to tell a friend. But we got a lot to get into, so enough of that. I want to start by talking about the biggest news from Friday, and that's, of course, that Elgton Jenkins is going to be listed as doubtful against the San Francisco 49ers, which, I'm not breaking any news here, is far less than ideal going up against a very tough 49ers defense that includes Nick Bosa. So that begs the question, who is going to be the starting offensive tackles in San Francisco for Green Bay this Sunday on Sunday Night Football? And I think there's some obvious conclusions that you could jump to, some obvious names that you could put in there that a lot of people have been discussing. I also want to go over one that I don't think many people have been discussing because Matt LaFleur's adage that he wants the 5 best linemen on the field. So we'll get to that in a moment. There's some obvious, potential starting candidates here, right? I think the first one, and I think maybe the most likely one, is that Billy Turner moves to left tackle and that Dennis Kelly starts at right tackle. There's a reason you go out and you get a veteran like Dennis Kelly, and it's exactly for this situation. Now, Dennis Kelly's going to have some ups and downs, and he's going to have more downs than ups if he has to play the majority of the game against Nick Bosa. This is not, to me, a Rick Wagner situation where Rick Wagner's going to come in and completely hold his own. There's going to be some issues in all likelihood with Dennis Kelly starting at tackle. In addition, I do think when Billy Turner's had to play left tackle, that's been an issue for him as well. It has not gone completely according to plan. So I don't think that that's an ideal situation, and none of these scenarios I'm going over are going to be an ideal situation, right? But I think in a way you're almost robbing yourselves of a good right tackle by moving Billy Turner away from right tackle. So I think that's something that Green Bay has to consider here is, do you want to just keep Billy Turner at right tackle? So at least you're just changing out the left tackle. Everything else is going to stay status quo. And, you can then just move somebody into that left tackle spot. And at least you only have to worry maybe about one tackle then. Because if you move Billy to left, now he's not comfortable. Maybe you need to help him. And if you've then got, whether it's, Dennis Kelly or whomever at right, then you have issues there too. So we'll see. I still think that's probably the most likely, that Turner goes to left and Kelly goes at right. And again, you like having two veterans out there in Kelly and Turner that can go against a tough 49ers defense. No matter what, it's going to be very much up to Aaron Rodgers to get the ball out of his hands quickly. And I also think that it's going to be very much very important, I should say, for the rest of these offensive linemen to really perform well as run blockers to try to make it so that Rodgers doesn't have to throw the ball and chuck it around 50 times with no David Bakhtiari, no Elgton Jenkins, etc. So that's the most likely one. The next one is that you can keep Billy Turner at right tackle and just move Dennis Kelly in at left tackle. Kelly's played at left tackle in his career. He's been a career swing tackle, being able to go to both sides. I think Kelly's probably a bit better on the right, but so is Billy Turner. So, in a way, you've got two right tackles here. One of them has to kick to left. To me, you keep Billy at right and you move Dennis, at that left tackle position. And again, now everything else stays the same, and you just need to put a little extra help on that left tackle side for Dennis Kelly if for some reason he struggles and is not able to get the job done one-on-one, which, like I said, I think if you put him in at left tackle, right tackle, there's going to be some hiccups throughout the course of the game. Next up is you could put Yosh Nijman at left tackle and keep Billy Turner at right tackle. I don't think this is completely out of the realm of possibility. Now, Yosh making his very first start on Sunday Night Football, prime time against Nick Bosa, not ideal, right? That's probably not the situation you want to bring him in with, but there's an argument to be made that from a talent standpoint, he's the best of the group and is the most athletic of the group. That might be the guy that you want at least trying to match up with Nick Bosa. Now, I think the nice thing here is if you go with Yosh and he doesn't work out, you can always bring in Dennis Kelly. There's always that option. You can always try something different. But if they feel comfortable with him, having that extra athleticism and, the ability to match, nobody's going to match with Bosa, right? But probably better than a Dennis Kelly would. It's not, again, out of the complete realm of possibility. I thought Yosh looked really good and, mostly good in preseason. Maybe really good is a little bit strong, but I thought he looked better than I expected. And I thought he looked, frankly, maybe better than Dennis Kelly. So I don't think that that's that far-fetched of an idea. And then last but not least, the fourth option here, and I'm throwing this one out there, and I don't think it's been talked about, is we know that Matt LaFleur wants to get his best 5 offensive linemen on the field, right? He's said it 1,000,001 times in press conferences. Best 5 guys, best 5 guys, best 5 guys. To me, your 5 best offensive linemen that you could have out there this weekend: Billy Turner. Of course, you've got, John Runyon Jr., you've got Royce Newman, you've got Josh Myers. Who's the next best offensive lineman? To me, that's Lucas Patrick. If I had a choice, forget about positions, right? If we're forgetting completely about positions, easy for me to say, and the choice is between Lucas Patrick, Dennis Kelly, or Yosh Nijman, I'm going Lucas Patrick. And then, to me, it's not particularly close. So that begs the question, okay, who can move to right tackle in that situation? And we know that John Runyon Jr. played tackle in college. We also know that Royce Newman played tackle in college. We also know that Royce Newman got actually a pretty decent amount of snaps at right tackle during the offseason and training camp, in rookie mini camps, in OTAs. And in fact, it looked like, they were trying him out at a couple different positions. He even got reps with the ones at right tackle, more during mini camps and OTAs, but it did happen. So that begs the question is, do you go Billy Turner left tackle, John Runyon Jr. left guard, where he played really well a week ago, Josh Myers center, Lucas Patrick right guard, which is by far his best position. He has struggled at left guard the last 2 seasons. He has been much better at right guard. And then do you move Royce Newman out? Also very quick feet. Also somebody who might be able to hold up a little bit against Nick Bosa. Is it going to be great? No. But if you're talking best 5 linemen, I kind of am leaning in that direction. Put Royce out at right tackle. I have a lot of faith in Royce Newman. I really, really do. And I think, Patrick, Runyon, and Myers is going to be fine inside. And then you got Billy Turner left tackle. I don't love the Billy Turner move. A part of me wants to keep Billy out at right tackle. But I think if you're really looking to get the best 5, then Billy at left and Royce at right with those 3 on the interior, I think that kind of makes the most sense. So that's probably what I would do. My guess is it's some form of Billy Turner and Dennis Kelly, probably Turner at left and Kelly at right. But Matt LaFleur is very aggressive with getting his best 5 on the field. And if it's me, I think I might kick Royce Newman out to right tackle. All right, that does it for offensive tackle discussion. I do want to quickly get into some of my grades from this week. As you know, I grade every player on every play, every season for the last 5 years, doing it again this year. And lots to discuss. I just finished up the grades later this week because of the Monday Night Football game, of course. Top 3 offensive players this week, mostly not going to be a surprise to you. Davante Adams was number 1. Aaron Jones was number 2. Aaron Rodgers was number 3. I thought Adams was spectacular. I thought the deep ball, 50 yards on a big third down, it was a gorgeous ball by Aaron Rodgers as well. But we just also saw Davante Adams after the catch. We saw him make some difficult grabs. I just thought this was a really great game from Adams. Of course, Aaron Jones with the 4 touchdowns. I thought he ran hard. I thought he had great vision and really made himself very, very useful in the passing game as well. Rodgers had a nice game, did have a couple uncharacteristic mistakes. The interception that he almost threw on a ball he had no right to throw to Davante Adams. He missed a couple shots to MVS that he could have hit on. Had a couple plays where he maybe could have got rid of the ball before taking a sack. But overall, when you have the numbers that Rodgers had in this game, near perfect passer rating, 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions, it's hard to say that's anything but a strong positive for Rodgers. John Runyon Jr., my top graded offensive lineman. So he comes in for Lucas Patrick. The question is going to be, all right, what can he do in that starting spot? I had him as the highest graded offensive lineman this week, ahead of Jenkins, Royce Newman, Myers, and then of course Billy Turner as well. So I thought it was a really nice performance. And if the injury doesn't happen to Jenkins, I think Runyon earned his spot at left guard. We'll see how they have to shuffle things around, but I definitely think that Runyon is a leg up on Lucas Patrick at this point in time. My bottom 3 offensive players, this was a little bit tough this week. Really everyone was right around neutral or better. Even when you're looking at some of the players who performed poorly. Allen Lazard and MVS were in my bottom 3, but both of them basically had a neutral grade, a -0.1 grade. It was it's literally a neutral grade. And then the only guy who was a little bit lower, believe it or not, was Elgton Jenkins. And again, very, very small negative grade, very slightly below average. But I thought he actually struggled in the run game early in the game. And then when he suffered the injury, he just wasn't quite the same after that. So by far and away, not a bad game from Elgton Jenkins. It's just that everyone else performed really well. And he ended up being my lowest graded offensive lineman, which was ultimately at the end of the day, who was going to end up grading out as the lowest player on the team or on the offense. As far as the defense goes, my top 3 graded defensive players this week: Eric Stokes, Jair Alexander, and Kenny Clark. Stokes had a couple ups and downs, but I thought his ups were very high. He had the pass breakups on 4th down in key situations. He had a couple other plays where he had sticky coverage. Definitely need to work on some of the communication pre-snap and things like that, but overall, I thought that was a really impressive performance by Eric Stokes, and something that I think he can really used as a foundation for himself moving forward on how to play, in the NFL, gained confidence. And I mean, it just has to be a huge confidence booster for him moving forward that he was able to play a game like that. Jair Alexander, another solid game from him. And then Kenny Clark had an interesting game. You go back and you watch specifically the first half. I thought Kenny Clark actually had a pretty poor first half in this game. He was actually trending as one of my lower graded players in the game. And then in the second half, he just completely turned it on, was a totally different player. So he really came up strong. And at the end of the day, his really good in the second half was better than his bad in the first half, and he ended up with a pretty positive grade. And it's almost on the flip side for the defense, where there's just not many players who graded in the positive. But not to take anything away from Kenny, he had a really, really good second half. A lot of stops, some pressures. So I think it was well worth the grade, but would have liked to have seen him turn that on a little bit earlier in the game. Bottom 3 defensive players from this past game: Kingsley Keke, second week in a row, lowest graded player on the defense. Really a brutal performance. Negative 1.6 grade, which is really bad. And I mean, especially when you consider he didn't play that many snaps. I don't know. There's nothing right now. He has no juice as a pass rusher. He's not holding up at the point of attack. I know people want to talk about, Lowry and Lancaster because those are easy targets, but Keke's been far worse than either of them. And right now, to me, he's borderline unplayable. And right now, I would definitely go with Jack Heflin and even go with Lowry or Lancaster ahead of Kingsley Keke right now. And his lack of development is pretty concerning at this point, because at one point he was looked at as a player who really could become a really nice starter, at least a really nice rotational player. And that's just not coming to fruition right now. And then my other 2 lowest graded players on defense: Kevin King and Shannon Sullivan. Kevin King giving up the big play to Quintez Cephas, had some miscommunications on defense, which was involved in the touchdown play. Had a couple other plays where he got beat off the line of scrimmage. Just another pretty inconsistent performance from Kevin. And then Shannon, even in minimal playing time, had a couple plays in the middle of the field where had some poor coverage, didn't really get taken advantage of. Quarterback just wasn't looking his way. But if you watch it closely, I thought he didn't have a great second half, specifically when he was in there, even in those dime situations. So kind of same story, right? Struggles along the defensive front, struggles with Kevin King and Shannon Sullivan. And when you look at it through two games so far, up front, I'm talking defensive linemen and edge rushers here, not inside linebackers, but defensive linemen, edge rushers. Preston Smith and Kenny Clark right now have a plus 1.5 grade for me through 2 games. Everyone else, Slayton, Lancaster, Lowry, Keke, Gary, Z, Rivers, Garvin, all of those guys combined, negative 6.8. And the entire group is a negative 5.3 through 2 games. And don't worry about the numbers. Just know that's really bad. And you only have 2 guys that you can sort of count on right now. Gary has not been great the first 2 games. He showed some flashes in the second half. But as I've said, flashes and potential and almost getting set, that's not good enough for Rashawn Gary anymore. You're going up against Trent Williams this week. You got to get something done, or Jimmy Garoppolo is going to pick your team apart. It's a big week for Rashawn Gary, and he really needs to step up and find his way to the quarterback and find his way to be a disruptor on this defense, because Green Bay doesn't have disruptors right now. He was a top 12 pick. He has all that potential. It's time to put it together. They could really, really use an improvement and a leap from him moving forward. And when you look at this defense as a whole, the defensive front's grading, the edge and linebackers, I just said, or edge and defensive line are grading poorly. The linebackers have basically been about neutral. You can attack Kevin King and Shannon Sullivan in the, at the cornerback position. Savage has been a slight negative. Amos has been a slight positive. Jair's obviously been great. Stokes is flashing, but there's just not enough players playing well right now. Hopefully that turns in week 3. We see some more dominant performances, but Green Bay could really use that from their defense, especially with their offensive line banged up. I don't think you can just count on Green Bay to put up 38 points in this game to go toe-to-toe with San Francisco. Defense has got to put up this game, and some of these players that I've been mentioning who have been struggling need to play a lot better than they did through the first 2 weeks of the season. That's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for joining me. Love to hear what you're thinking as to who's going to start at offensive tackle. Make sure to note it below. I'll definitely be checking it out. I'll be right back here tomorrow with a game preview, so make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.